This is a Dude Studios production. And hey, I'm the dude.
Hey bartender, pass me a drink. A reason that I'm here is I need time to think all the ways of the world.
Hey, welcome back to Hey Bartender Podcast. I am your bartender for the evening. You can call me Anthony if you have a severe memory problem with people's names like we all do. You can call me Dude. I'm completely cool with that. Oh, it is the Wednesday Quick Shot episode. That means we're just going to have one and get the fuck out of here. Well, it doesn't always happen, but hey, what are you going to do? So, to start off the show, we got to do the same thing that we do every show. We got to start off with a drink recipe. This recipe, I swiped off the Fraternal Order of Bartenders Facebook page from a guy named Sean P. Quinn. He said his bar named a cocktail after him, and he loved every bit of it. The Quintessential Cocktail. Now, I don't know if you call it the Sean B. Quinn or you call it the Quintessential Cocktail. Take your pick. If you don't work where he works, then you can call it whatever you want. So, how you make this quintessential cocktail? You will need 1 ounce of Jack Honey, 1 ounce of Captain Morgan, 3/4 ounce pumpkin syrup, 3/4 ounce lemon juice, a dash of Polynesian tiki bitters, and a cinnamon sugar rim. Looks like you can just pour it straight into the glass, or you can shake and strain it. That's all up to you, but you got to put it in a bucket in order to fit all that stuff. And he gives a suggestion not only for people to try it, but to garnish it with a badass dinosaur figurine. You'll understand when I post the picture on Instagram and Facebook. But thank you, Sean P. Quinn, for sharing that with everybody so I could swipe it off the website and share it with everybody even more. For those of you who don't follow Fraternal Order Bartenders, but it's a cool Facebook page. Trust me. Bunch of bartenders get together, share stories, share questions, grievances, happy moments, and on the occasional drink recipe. Go check it out. Fraternal Order of Bartenders on Facebook. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the Lone Ranger, not knowing Tonto was disguised as a pool table, racked his balls. I'm just kidding. It is Wednesday. It is the Quick Shot episode. This is going to round out November. For those of you who are actually listening to it on Wednesday, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And I hope everybody's being safe. I hope that majority of you are able to go and spend time with your families, or maybe a few friends that you're close with, because, Thanksgiving alone can kind of be a bummer. For those of you who have to work on Thanksgiving, it's kind of a bummer. It takes away time from your family and your friends, but you have a chance to make some serious scratch, just to try to make you feel better. But, the managers are right. There are people out there that have absolutely nothing else to do with their lives, so they just go back to the bar where everybody knows their name. And, I'm sorry you have to work the holiday, but make some money. Look on the bright side. I've never personally worked at a bar or restaurant or anything where we had to work on the holidays. They gave us those days off. And I think one of the bars that I worked at, they gave us Christmas Eve and Christmas off because they used Christmas Eve as the excuse to hold the bar's Christmas party, and then Christmas Day we all just stayed home. But there was another bar in the neighborhood that stayed open during the major holidays, and my friend Shannon, when she worked there, she took those shifts just because there was an awesome chance to make some serious cash, and because she was going to be the only bar open in town. And she said it wasn't dead. It was the place was packed. So, try to look on the bright side. Don't feel too bad. If you time it right, you can quickly get in good turkey dinner and then all of a sudden disappear right before the dishes are done. Have to be done. So there is a bright side to it. Trust me. Ask me anything. I'll justify it for you. Whether it's a good justification or a bad justification. Well, it depends on the situation. And who I have to convince. I can justify a lot of stuff. But anyway, I told you guys that this November, being my birthday month, I was going to talk about the stuff that I personally enjoyed talking about with my customers. It's like so far this month, I've told you the story behind Piano Man. I used to love telling people about that. The story of why I hate Leonardo DiCaprio. I will tell the weirdest stranger on the street that story just because he was a dick to me and everybody I know. And that feeling is never going to go away. And it's been, better than 30 years. And a couple, maybe 30 years. But, I've told you other stuff. Anyway, today, I've told you guys a lot before, I love talking about music. When I was behind my bar, I used to talk about music with a lot of people, and I understand that a lot of you bartenders nowadays hook up your cell phones or your MP3 players to the sound system in your bar, and you basically control what everybody gets to listen to. So you, in no fault of your own, you get to listen to the stuff you like. That makes your life go a lot better instead of somebody going over to the jukebox and playing With or Without You by U2 78 times. And so having that control can be kind of nice and make it a little bit more tolerable for the bartender. But when it came to music, I had a couple good friends that guaranteed they came into the bar and I can talk about music with them all the time. Classic rock is normally what I would talk to them about because that's pretty much where my wheelhouse is. I don't know everything about music, but I can hold my own in a conversation. Now, some of you guys who've listened to this podcast know I'm a huge Beatles fan. I can talk about the Beatles forever or until it just gets stupid. And usually I can tell when it's getting stupid. Now, when it comes to the Beatles, I thought them as a group was when they were the best. Everybody constantly always asked me, "Who's your favorite Beatle?" And I would always sit back and say, I didn't really enjoy their solo stuff as much as I enjoyed their stuff when they were together. As a group, as a team, I thought they were incredible. But when they went off on their own, you could tell something was missing. All four of them were kind of trying to get away from the whole Beatles sound. And they, in my worthless opinion, tried a little bit too hard. Paul McCartney kind of wandered back to it in the later years, or more recent years. It's just, I just couldn't really get into their solo stuff. That was just the way it was. I prefer them as the Beatles. So I would sit and talk with, the first time I met this guy, his name was Rusty, supposedly. And the story behind him was everybody in the bar believed that he was the drummer for Foghat. I had my doubts about it, but I never really asked him about Foghat because the only song I could think of at the time when it came to Foghat was Slow Ride, and because it got played on the classic rock station constantly. But when I would sit and talk with him, and we'd talk about the Beatles, and we'd get really emotional about it, and really into the conversation. When I first became his friend, he saw that I was wearing a Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band t-shirt, and he goes, "Beatles fan, huh?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, well, let me give you a test. Other than Hofner, what kind of bass did Paul McCartney play? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, Rickenbacker. And he shook my hand. And he goes, yes, you are a Beatle fan. And I was like, we became friends directly after that. And we didn't stick with the Beatles. We talked about all different types of genres of music. But the Beatles were the common ground where we both stood. He knew tons about rock and roll, and he never really corrected anybody when when word got around that he was the drummer for Foghat. And he didn't say he was. He never said he wasn't. But he never corrected anybody. So, oh my God, you're the drummer for Foghat. And I kept looking at him and went, no, I don't think so. Because I went to a record store at one point and looked at an album cover, and I said, that ain't him. No. But he was still a good friend, so I wouldn't ever call him out on it. Some other people did when he had to split town, but I never did, because I considered him a good friend. So another good friend that I had that I'd talk about music constantly. His name was Jeff. He's passed away now. Miss him. He was an excellent drummer, and he played with a 50s, 60s cover band that was popular around the Portland area. I don't even know if they're still around, but he and I would get started talking about music and pretty much not stop, constantly joking about various things. And the stuff we'd talk about, it would flat out amaze me how many decades of rock and roll we'd go and talk about. We'd be talking about Metallica one second, the Doobie Brothers another second, and then Green Day another second, then Freddie and the Dreamers. I mean, Freddie and the Dreamers? Ugh. Their only popular song that I can think of is I'm telling you now, I'm telling you right away. I don't know if any of you guys know that song, but there you go. But he and I got to know each other mostly because I saw a woman and a guy with his head down on the bar. The woman was wearing a Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts t-shirt, and I said, hey, I used to date the drummer's daughter. And then all of a sudden the guy with his head down lifts up his head and says, I don't have a daughter. And I, without missing a step, as if we were talking right before that, I said, stepdaughter, or, Michelle? And he goes, you know Michelle? And that's how our friendship pretty much started. And then he kept coming in, pay me a visit every now and then. Great guy, a little manic depressive from time to time, but still, I enjoyed the hell out of sitting and talking about all sorts of things. And the best part about the way he ended his night is if he couldn't play the solo to Wipeout on the bar with his hands, then he called a cab. That was his gauge for being how he figured out that whether he was sober or not. But like I said, being a big fan of music and word getting around that I'm a fan of music and words accidentally getting exaggerated on how much I know about music, people would start coming up and asking me all these weird, goofy questions. I've told you about the guys that came in and asked me, because Shannon told them that if you want to talk about rock and roll, you got to go over to the other bar where my friend Anthony is. And they asked me a question: what was the first song to break the 3-minute mark? And my answer to him was "Hey Jude," but actually I was wrong. It was actually House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. So because radio stations back in the 60s, they didn't really ever pass that 2.5-3 minute mark. They kept them short and edited the shit out of it. So when you went to buy an album with that song that you just heard on the radio that you liked, you might hear a completely different version with extra verses. And so that was, to me, that's kind of unfair to the artist, but hell, the record's sold. Who cares? But then all of a sudden I start getting asked questions about musicians in particular, all the way from, since I was a Beatle fan, they'd ask me like, where did the Beatles find their boots that they wore on stage to the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964? And I don't fucking know that. And that's why I never sit back and say I know everything about everything, anything, actually, because there's always going to be that one person that brings up that one little bit, tiny, obscure bit of trivia I usually try to avoid that. So you think, so when people come up and say, so you think you know everything about the Beatles? I'd always preface it by going, well, I know quite a bit, but not everything. And, then they'd ask me strange questions. But sometimes I would enjoy the questions because it would spark debate, not only with just me and the person I'm talking to, but also everybody else around. Like, who are your favorite fill in the blanks? Now let's keep this easy. Top 3 rock and roll vocalists. Now, it's kind of like in High Fidelity where they go top 10 songs about death or whatever like that. And, if I had to sit back and think about it, top 3 rock and roll vocalists. Then usually right about this time I'd be caught, on the spot. Okay, I got to think of somebody quick. No particular order. I would say Roger Daltrey from The Who. I would say then it would be Ann Wilson from Heart and Freddie Mercury. At the time, I knew the guy had insane range. Besides, if you don't believe me, watch the Live Aid concert where the Queen played. It's incredible. The Ann Wilson one always threw people off because they thought I would just name male singers, but no, Ann Wilson, Jesus Christ, that woman has probably the most powerful voice in rock and roll, and she's belting it out. And she doesn't even look like she's trying. And Roger Daltrey, just listen, Won't Get Fooled Again. And listen to that scream he makes at the end of that song. You know what I'm talking about. Then came the big debate whether they agreed with me or didn't agree with me. Like some of you right now are probably sitting back thinking, and I totally encourage it, who are my favorite lead singers? And, send me an email or something like that, dude at heybartenderpodcast.com. Give me your input. I'd love to hear it. Then it would come to who's your favorite bass players. And I would always start out with John Entwistle from The Who because the guy had the most thunderous sound. And once again, another guy that was playing the shit out of that bass and didn't even look like he was trying. Next would have been Paul McCartney because he didn't necessarily play along with the guitar, which was kind of common back then, where the bass player would just play the root of the chord with the guitar player. He played harmonies or played his own thing on a fill or something like that. And he started out as a guitar player, but when Stu Sutcliffe left the band, he just picked up the bass and started going. So you have to admire him for that. Just going, okay, I'll just do it. That was the worst impression there. And let's see, third, Cliff Burton. You got to go with Cliff Burton for best bass players of all time, because Cliff Burton was a major rager. His head just swinging around that stage the whole time. And you really pick apart Metallica's music, you can really hear the harmonies and the intricate things he was doing behind everybody else. Like Orion, you sit back and listen to Orion, and you hear actual bass solos. Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth from the Kill 'Em All album, an actual bass solo on a heavy metal album. That is something that I haven't seen ever. There might be some out there, I don't know. Now, once you move away from that, you got to say, okay, guitar players. So that one was always really hard for me because my favorite guitar players would almost change week to week. And so a lot of you probably curious why I usually pick the older bands is because I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But John Lennon, good solid rhythm guitar player. And this is no particular order, but John Lennon, a lot of people just don't think of him that much as a guitar player, but he played a very simplistic rhythm with weird chords. If you're a guitar player and you know about Beatle chords, they're really weird. But yeah, he was good at it, and he, I can't deny that. Is he better than George Harrison? No. But right now, John Lennon. Pete Townsend of The Who. So, a guy who has all this energy and all of this flash that can still play guitar. If I had to put him in a band, I'd put him as rhythm guitar. I wouldn't put him as lead. Because his rhythm guitar playing is from at that time in rock and roll music, it was unheard of. It was just really fast chords, and he actually was the one. I think he was the one that invented a switch box to change from clean to distorted sound on guitar. Don't quote me on that. I may be wrong. And then other favorite, Jimi Hendrix, another icon that changed guitar playing forever. Just the sounds that he was getting and the way he closed his eyes, threw his head back, and just played what it came from his heart, along with probably a couple tabs of acid. But it came from him into the guitar and out to the audience. Watch the performance he did at Woodstock. You'll understand. Now, I said a lot of old guitar players. I do have a couple favorite guitar players currently, but I've had a few problems with the way the music industry records things nowadays, because everything's done by computer and the song is kind of built. So they cut the piece that they like out of it, put it here, cut the next piece that they like, put it there. And like Eddie Van Halen, I guess, when he was recording the last few albums of Van Halen, they would cut and paste these solos together for him, and they were all different solos that he, let's do another take. Okay, play a different solo. Okay, let's do another take. I'll play a different solo. So they took all the bits that they liked from every solo that he would do and then tell him to learn it. And that bothers me. So I sit and question a lot of the more current. I'm not saying that Kurt Hammett, Eddie Van Halen, or any of those guys, Dave Mustaine, or I'm stuck on the guy, the lead guitar player for Slayer. But I'm not saying any of those guys are bad guitar players. It's just those three were the ones that popped into my head right away because, like I said, I usually do this up on the spot. Now, favorite drummers. Me being a drummer, I did always have some favorites. And So I would, people would say, okay, who's the favorite drummer? Who's your top 3 favorite drummers of all time? And I would always start off every single time Keith Moon of The Who. He looked there was a fine line between brilliance and insanity with the way he played, and it looked like it was all over the place, but it was well thought out and methodic, depending on how much drugs he did that day, I guess. But Keith Moon has always been one of my top favorites. Ringo Starr, you could set a clock to that guy. He kept perfect time for everything. My favorite story about him was when they were recording Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the song A Day in the Life. John Lennon, I guess, walked up to him and said, I want the drums to sound like this song, whatever song it was. I heard it on the anthology, but I don't know what it is now. And then Ringo looks at him and says, there were 3 drummers in that. And then John Lennon looks at him and says, well, don't let that discourage you, and left him alone. The way he played the drums in Day in a Life worked for that song perfectly. And, when you're a drummer and you're faced with a task like that, where the songwriter just kind of gives you brief instructions, you got to come up with something. And he did, all the way. And usually I would throw in a curveball. Most people don't know him. He was the drummer for Billy Joel for years, Liberty DeVito. The guy, the best thing that I can describe the way he played the drums was he knew how to play hard for a soft song. And it was fascinating because he could beat the crap out of the drums while Billy Joel's playing Honesty, and it made sense. That's, you'd sit back and think, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be played. And that I found that fascinating. You play hard, but for a slow song. Interesting. And that kind of way of thinking just kind of interest me. But of course, I gave you my top 3, but I'm sure some of you are thinking this right now. And I got asked this constantly. Somebody would always jump up and say, what about Neil Peart? Okay. My only thing I'm going to have to say about that, I appreciate Rush. I do like a handful of their songs. But when it came to Neil Peart's drumming, I also like Lars Ulrich. But when it came to Neil Peart's drumming, it seemed very technical, and it's like he worked out a math problem and didn't do it with feeling. That's the difference between Neil Peart and Keith Moon. Keith Moon, it was just like hit something, and it made sense. Neil Peart, his technique was incredible. It just, for some reason, it felt overrated to me. Okay, and I'm sorry to all you guys that are Rush fans out there, but that's just the way I feel. I'm not knocking Rush. I'm not knocking Neil Peart. It's just, YYZ, fucking awesome. But it's just, he didn't impress me. And there are a lot of Rush fans out there that either wanted to punch me or start crying when I would say that. And they say, you like drummers like Lars Ulrich, and you don't like Rush? And I'm like, yeah, sorry. Also, honorable mention, since I didn't put him in the top 3, and he's not really known for it anymore. Dave Grohl. Excellent good rhythm guitar player. Well, excellent guitar player. Excellent drummer. And excellent singer. And he seems like such a nice guy. It looks like he could talk to anybody and sit down and have a beer. It's I would love to meet the guy. And, but he deserves an honorable mention, even though like I said, I came up with those names on the fly. And, but Dave Grohl, I appreciate everything he does because, uh, it comes, well, he's written a couple albums where he played everything on the album. And, that's hard to do. And, but the guy's just hella talented. I could compliment him all day long, but yeah, I got huge respects for him. So that's it. That's basically how the music conversations would go around my bar. I mean, there would be nights where end up getting who's your top 3, top 5, or what do you think of this album? What do you think of that album? What's your favorite Beatle album? What's your favorite Who album? Metallica album? That's the type of questions that were kind of fun because you could debate them with the customers. I mean, when it came to guitar players, I'm sure Eric Clapton made a lot of people's top 3 list. Stevie Ray Vaughan, or the lists are different with every single person, and it's a really fascinating way to get to know somebody. That's why whenever I start talking to somebody, I usually talk about music. And because I don't believe that I don't believe there's anybody in this world that doesn't like music. Whether it's rock and roll, classical, jazz, alternative, pop, whatever. There's always a common ground that you can find somewhere in there to at least talk about. And that could be for anything. That's why there's sports fans. They're either brothers to the bone or they love to hate each other. Metallica fans, they're every time I met a Metallica fan, it's almost like a brotherhood type of thing where we have that common ground. And all of a sudden we get along all the time. It was weird. And, probably the same thing with Kiss Army, but I don't listen to Kiss that much. But it was actually kind of funny in some cases where people would come up and, hey, did you listen to the new Limp Bizkit album? And I never was a big fan of Limp Bizkit. And I said, oh, no, I didn't catch it. Oh, they did this song called Behind Blue Eyes. It's so fucking killer. And I say, oh, yeah, I heard they did that cover. And they said, it wasn't a cover. It was their song. And I said, no, Behind Blue Eyes is a song by The Who. It was done way back. And they said, well, they did it better. And I'd usually leave it alone about there because maybe to them they did it better, even though they'd never heard the original version of it. But I'm in some cases I'm kind of a power geek, nerd, naturalist, whatever it is when it comes to people covering other music. There have been dozens of people that done covers that I completely admire their version that they did it. Like Disturbed's Sound of Silence, Metallica's Turn the Page. Yeah, I could go on. But the customers would come up and try to start a conversation with me. And music just was my wheelhouse, and I found that the easiest thing to talk about. Now, what's the easiest thing for you guys to talk about it? When you're behind the bar, when somebody's trying to get to know you or you're trying to get to know the new customer. I want to hear about this sort of thing. So if you're in the mood, email me, dude@heybartenderpodcast.com. And, I want to hear your stories or read your stories of the best conversations for you to get to know a new customer. That'd be fun for me. But anyway, until the next show, ladies and gentlemen, That's it for the quick shot episode, Wednesday episode of Hey Bartender podcast. Thank you, Sean P. Quinn, for sharing that drink with everybody. If you ever try out that cocktail I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, email me, dude@heybartenderpodcast.com, and let me know what you think. In fact, if you've got a drink you'd like to share with me, just send me the recipe, dude@heybartenderpodcast.com. Hell, if you even want to be on the show, email me. I'd love to get you on here. I'd love to talk to other bartenders and get their stories. If you're a music act, same thing. I love to promote music. So that usually happens on Saturdays if you've been following along with the show. But if you want to get your sound out there, I want to help. So just let me know, dude@heybartenderpodcast.com, or you can reach me on Facebook, Hey Bartender Podcast, or Instagram, Hey Bartender Podcast. I hope all of you are doing okay, are trying to, are getting by as best you can with all the restaurants closing around the United States again. I feel bad for you guys that you have been deemed as non-essential, even though people need to eat, and all of a sudden you don't matter, and then you can't eat because there's no stimulus check in sight, and you have to wait for unemployment, and the unemployment's just a fraction of what you make in a week, or possibly in a day. But hang in there, and if you want to jump on with me on Hey Bartender Podcast and talk about it, I'd love to hear you. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, lots of love, lots of sex, lots of happiness, and don't take any shit from anyone. Good night.
I think I need another drink. What do you mean it's last call?